Today I'm going to tell you guys the Indian folk story of the magic fiddle. So once in a kingdom far away there lived 7 brothers and their wives. Now these 7 brothers also had one sister. This one sister was unmarried, but she was the best cook in the family. The brothers only wanted to eat her dinner, they didn't want to eat the dinner of their wives, and this made their wives very jealous, for they wanted to provide food for their husbands, but their husbands didn't like their food. And so they became so angry at their sister-in-law that one day they tracked down a magic sorcerer. And they said to the sorcerer, "We hate our sister-in-law. You can take her and use her as your wife if you just get her out of our house, and we don't care how you do this." And so the sorcerer devised a plan. Now the next day the sister went to the river to obtain water like she usually did to cook for her family. So she took her bowl, dipped it into the river, but nothing would go into the bowl. The water would just slip right out again. And she called out to her oldest brother. She said, "Brother, brother, the water is rising up to my knee, but I still cannot obtain any water." And he just ignored her. So she tried it again. She said, "Brother, brother, the water is now up to my waist, but I can't get any water." And he just ignored her again. She said, "Brother, brother, it's up to my chin now, but I still can't get any water." And he ignored her again. And eventually the sister died. She drowned. And so the magic sorcerer came and obtained her soul to become his wife. And then as she acted as his wife for quite some time, he eventually transformed her soul into a bamboo plant that he planted on the side of her brother's house. And so the brothers kind of forgot about their sister. They ate their wives' food, and the wives were very happy. And the sister remained as the bamboo plant on the side of their house. Now there was a musician who would travel up and down the road of the village every day, and he would beg for money to get a new fiddle. And so one day he saw this beautiful bamboo plant that was on the side of the road, and he decided to make that his fiddle. And so he took his axe, and right as he was about to chop it down, right at the root, it said, "No, wait, don't chop me at the root, chop me at the top." He said, "Okay, fine." He thought maybe it was the spirit talking to him, so he decided to chop it at the top. And right as he was about to chop it, it said, "No, wait, chop me at the root." And so he's like, "Okay, I'll do it at the root then." And right as he was about to chop, it said, "Oh no, wait, chop me at the top." And this went back and forth from the top to the root, from the top to the root. And eventually he got so frustrated that he just cut it right down the middle. And he transformed this bamboo plant into the most beautiful fiddle anyone had ever seen. Now this musician wasn't very talented naturally, but when he played this new magical fiddle, it was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever heard. The 7 brothers and their wives were so mystified by this music that they were trying to buy the fiddle away from him. But he said, "No, for the emperor has asked me to perform for him tonight. I will not sell this fiddle to anyone." And so the musician went to the emperor's palace to play for him and the prince. And as the musician played, they thought this music was so beautiful, the emperor said, "I'll buy this fiddle from you. I want to make this fiddle my own so I can create this music." But the musician, knowing known that this fiddle was especially special, he said, "No way, I'm not selling this fiddle to anyone." And so the emperor kept serving the musician more and more wine to get him a little drunk. And so when the musician had passed out, they stole the fiddle and kicked the musician out into the street. So the emperor started to play this fiddle, and he would play it every single day before him and his son would go out into the village, and once he had done playing it, he set it on the table for the day. So this became their normal routine. The emperor would play in the morning, they would go out for the day, and then come back at night to find the fiddle right back on the table where they had left it. However, they noticed that when they would come back at night, the prince had food ready for him on his bed. Now they weren't sure who was doing this, but he was a prince, so there was probably quite a few women who were trying to impress him with their cooking. And so they didn't think much of it, but eventually the prince was so enticed with this wonderful cooking that he wanted to know who was doing it. So after the emperor had finished playing the fiddle in the morning, the emperor put the fiddle on the table and went out into the village. The prince, however, stayed behind, and he hid under his bed, under the covers, waiting to see which woman was putting food onto his bed. And he couldn't believe what he saw, for the fiddle on the table suddenly transformed into a beautiful woman. He didn't know how this was happening, but the beautiful women made all this wonderful food and set it on his table, on his bed, and then transformed back into the bamboo fiddle, back onto the table. And he didn't know how this happened. He was so confused that the next day he remained behind to watch it again. And yet again, the bamboo fiddle transformed into a beautiful woman who cooked him a wonderful meal, transformed back into the fiddle. And so the next day he said, okay, I'm going to trap her this time. And so when the fiddle transformed into the woman, he said, woman, you have made me all this wonderful food. I want to make you my wife. However, the sister, who is now the fiddle woman, said, no, I am ashamed to my family, for I was trapped by a sorcerer and became his wife. I cannot be your wife. I'm of a different caste and I'm ashamed. And the prince said to her, today I am deciding that you are of the same caste as me. You are now royalty and you will be my wife because I love you and I love the food you make for me. And so the sister lived happily ever after with her prince. And she would invite her brothers to come stay with them in their wonderful palace, but she would tell the wives to stay at home, for that was the revenge she took on them. I hope you enjoyed my story.